I was just texting me and he said he's like 2 minutes away.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. Let's pull up the slides on the big screen. Oh, great. I got to sign in. They put a new computer in here, so now I have to like re-sign into everything. Almost there, people. Almost there. Good morning, afternoon, something like that. Yeah, close that and back to here for a second. Mark you down. Okay. And okay, so we're recording. Sorry about the delay there. I forgot I had to sign in the PowerPoint. They put a new computer in this room, which I'm glad for, but I got to sign everything in. So now we can get started. We are in week 10. Of course, this is Monday. And let's get to the next slide. We're going to be talking a bit more about an area I am extremely familiar with, diversity and inclusion. My dissertation, the theoretical framework for my doctoral dissertation included equity, diversity, and inclusion. That's what I used to build my framework. And so I'm very familiar with it. And as a matter of fact, in a few places here, I actually cite myself because I returned back to that published dissertation. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is DEI, not DEO. I don't know why that came up like that, or EDI, depending on the source used, are vital in today's globalized business climate because they can provide employee motivation and engagement. And let's take a quick pause from that and log you in. That's fine. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Gotcha. Not a problem at all. We're going to be talking a bit about how specifically diversity and inclusion can help build up a positive environment, but more specifically, why they're ethical choices. Think about this. And I've mentioned this before. You know, I'm a theologian as well. My first master's is in theological studies. Um, Many religions have in their core teachings that we should be treating other people the way we want to be treated. When you break down DEI, that is essentially what DEI is. Now, DEI is currently a hotbed topic. There's a lot of controversy around it, and there really shouldn't be, because some of the people, at least in this country, who are major critics of Vios, can you close that door? Thank you. Sometimes I worry my voice might be too loud. There are major critics of DEI say that they are adherents to one of these particular religions that says we should do unto others as we ourselves want done unto us. Now, DEI is not about meeting a quota. We have to have X amount of people from this cultural group or this ethnic group or no, it's not about a quota. It's about including in your pool of potential candidates or your pool of employees, your human resources, the opportunity for anybody from any culture, ethnicity, gender, ability level, age group to be able to be in that pool and to be a viable candidate or employee, as long as they have the qualifications to do that job. It is not about bringing people in that are from other cultural groups or genders or whatever into the workplace who are not qualified. That's not what DEI is. One, first and foremost, you must have the qualifications to perform that job. If it requires you to have a doctorate, you're not considering people who do not have doctorates. And let me tell you something, it's not just a doctorate. When you get to that point, it's very specific. We need people with this type of doctorate, this specialization. Okay. So we're not just bringing anybody in arbitrarily. The people must be qualified, whether it's females and males, whatever it is, they have to first be qualified. Now, once they meet that qualification, now DEI says, don't pay any attention to that person's ethnicity, their race, their ability level. Now, there is a small loophole there that we're going to talk about right now. If I have to be able to move 50-pound boxes all day long, but I am unable because of my disability to lift anything greater than 20 pounds, I am not qualified for that position functionally. So I'm not being excluded because I'm disabled. I'm excluded because I can't perform the task. And so that's part of the qualifications. Not only do they need the education or the experience or the training, but they need to physically be able to do the task. Okay. So currently in this country, there's a big debate on DEI, and there's a move towards reversing DEI policies. In the long run, I think that we're going to find it an essential component in business, and we're going to need to apply it if we want to attain and maintain competitive advantage. Think about this. If I restrict people based on their ethnicity, their race, their religion, their gender, I'm reducing the talent pool that I have access to. I'm reducing the perspectives, the experiences, the education of these people. So I limit that down while other countries welcome people from all people groups. They're able to expand their talent pool. And so that's how a competitive advantage can shift from one place, one nation to another. That's one way. There are many ways it can occur, but that's one. And I think in the long run, we're going to see that we need DEI. The head of the NFL said, no, DEI is here to stay. We're not giving up our DEI policies because they're right. And I think that's a very profound way of expressing it. We do them because they're right. And there's actually been evidence that it's going to help increase the profit of that organization, the competitive advantage of that organization, etc. Not just in the short term, but in the long term. And too many business leaders get short-sighted and they think about just now. And they're not thinking about 7 years down the road, 5 years down the road, 3 years down the road. So now diversity in the workplace. Byers and Stanbury noted that there's a lot more diversity in the workplace today when compared to even just a few decades ago. All right. One, that is because we are better at explaining and defining what diversity is. Two is generally society is becoming more open to different people and people groups. Generally, we do see some retraction on that, but generally. So do you think that this is due to the globalization of business? Okay, everybody in this classroom currently, in the physical classroom, is from another country. Bios, you're from Germany, correct?
Yes.
You're from Belgium, and you're from Spain, right? All right, just in this class, we've got 3 different people groups represented, okay, just physically in this classroom. So I think that the globalization of the economy and business has led to a greater diversity because there's more mobility in the workforce. For instance, you graduate, let's say you find a job offer here. You're able then to work at that job here or in Canada or in Australia or back in your home country. You're more mobile and able to move around than we were at other periods of time. Or could this be, well, I put down the mobile workforce. I think it's a combination. The globalization brought the mobilization of the workforce. So while communication can be difficult at times due to language barriers, cultural barriers, religious barriers, these can be turned into strengths under the right leadership. So let's say we have a team And on the team, we have somebody who is a practicing Hindu from India. We have somebody who is a Muslim from the Arabic world. We have somebody who is from England and let's say agnostic. We have somebody from the US who's Southern Baptist. We got all these worldviews that now can be brought into that room. So when we're looking at the different factors involved in decision making, we've got multiple worldviews that we can actually bring ideas to the table based on those worldviews. As a leader, I think that's where strength lies. One, that's where creativity lies, innovation. Okay. So, yes, it is a strength. Now, the language barrier, somebody may be proficient in English, but not expert in English. And there can be some communication issues. My first wife was from the Philippines. Her English was very proficient, but she was not an expert level on it. And at times she wouldn't know how to say a word or what the right word to use. I tend to be a very patient person, and I got pretty used to figuring out what she was trying to say, and I was able to help her, and she appreciated it because it was done in a good spirit. So we need more patience in the workforce when we encounter these barriers. We need more understanding. We need to be able to think about what would it be like if I was in that person's shoes? Okay. What if I was like Vios? I love soccer. I'm good at soccer. I'm from Germany. I'm here in America. English is may not be, it's not your first language, right? It's your third. Okay. So what would it be like sitting in a classroom listening to a lecture? That's what leaders need to do. You need to think about what your team members are experiencing. Now, there's the in group versus the out group. One factor that arises in today's workplace is the dynamics of human relationships, and this includes interconnection. Interconnectedness is a concept from systems theory. We're talking people like Barry Oshry, Peter Senge, researchers like that. Now, systems theory, in a nutshell, is that we are interconnected in this classroom through email, through physical conversation, through Zoom. That connection is fairly strong. Now, on social media, we're interconnected with people, but that connection is generally weaker because we really don't know these other individuals. We're not interacting with them. The more interconnected we are, the more ideas can flow through that particular society. Now, there's a positive and negative side here. Positive is we can actually work together, collaborate together, and work towards progress, or we can spread misinformation. On social media, the information you get has not been vetted. It's not been verified to be factual. That duty lays upon each of us when we're consuming content on social media. Most people don't take the time that is required to vet that information. So they begin to believe things that are not based in truth. Also, you begin to gravitate towards consuming social media content that aligns with what you already think and believe. That creates an echo chamber. That means that in places like that on the internet, new ideas do not occur. It's just a regurgitation of the same thing. My mother has been quite guilty of being in an echo chamber most of her life. Okay. She surrounds herself with people that think like her, that talk like her, that basically validate everything she says. But somebody like me who does not validate what she thinks it says and brings up the other side of the equation, even just playing devil's advocate, because I want to know, what about this? What about that? And I don't know till I examine it. And she's not willing to do that. So she's got people around her just echoing what she's already saying. That creates this confirmation bias. Now she thinks she's got the truth when in fact all she has is something she said that got to someone else that circulated back to her and just goes in a loop. That creates a bad environment. That's one of the downsides of this interconnectedness. So this dynamic can be encouraged by leadership. What dynamic? In group versus out group. Okay. We are the majority in this team. So we are going to become strong. What we say goes. And if you don't come in line with us, we're going to create this other category, the out group. You're an outcast now. Okay. We don't want your comments. We're going to ridicule you. It's not safe. You're going to feel fear. You're going to self-censor, which means you're not contributing your perspectives, your perceptions, your ideas. Now we have an in group with the cool kids and the out group, the nerds. Okay. This creates barriers within that team. That is not a team that is expressing and experiencing diversity and inclusion. Inclusion brings everybody together, breaks down these walls. Now, the employees tend to follow what the senior leadership does. So if the senior leadership is pushing people into an outcast category, the out group, the employees are going to do the same thing. If they're talking bad about a particular people group, if they're saying jokes and that are against this particular religion or this people group, the employees are going to do the same. So the senior leaders ethically need to act in a way that is full of diversity and inclusion, not one of exclusion and separation. And this can be mitigated by using or applying social identity theory, SIT, to better understand the barriers and the ways to reduce them. I did apply that in my dissertation. This is not something you're going to need for your work. I'm just throwing this in there, a little extra information. Social identity theory helps to understand the behavior displayed by different groups. And it can also help understand the personal image each person has of themselves and how it impacts that group. Because our personal image, the way we understand ourselves, is quite nuanced. It's complicated. It's based on how my family and I interrelate and interact. It's based on my friend group, my associations, other groups I belong to, my job, the people I'm around at my job. So much of our identity is comprised of from our job. So now my identity is layered almost like in an archaeological dig. To get to the authentic, real Brian, I have to dig through all these other things that I've piled on through the years. Well, social identity theory can help us to be able to do that, especially myself as a researcher. Very, very useful for that. But a leader can sit there and say, okay, your identity of yourself is based on a bunch of different factors. Yours as well, but they're different factors. So now when you come here, how do you see yourself in this organization? What identity what are you adding to your identity from this organization? Specifically, when we're talking diversity and inclusion, we want one of acceptance and bringing people together for the purpose of succeeding at our task as an organization. Inclusion. Myers and Stanbury defined inclusion as the engagement of all employees in the corporate culture. Now, Mullen et al. In 2021 defined it as the process of how an organization makes sure its members from the majority and minority groups feel desired, valued, and appreciated. I included the definition from Mullen in my dissertation, and I included it here because I think it's more comprehensive. It explains more. We're bringing people, not just all employees, that's a simple way of saying it, but specifically people from the majority group and the minority groups. And we want them to feel desired, valued, and appreciated, like they are contributing to this organization. In other words, it is the proper and ethical treatment of employees within that organization. This crosses any ethnic, cultural, or religious barriers that might exist. So these barriers that occur, communication, we're going to have patience and understanding and empathy. But to cross the other barriers, guess what? You need patience, understanding, and empathy. Empathy is being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and to think, what would it feel like to experience being in a room and hearing these jokes that you know are directed against you? How's that going to make that person feel? That's empathy, feeling another person's pain. Diversity. Byers and Stanbury noted that diversity is all about making sure each person has a chance to be included. Like we talked about at the top of this lecture, it's about the opportunity to be able to participate in that process. For people to hear my lecture, unless someone just wants to audit and they get approved for that, you have to be a student at Cleary University. And you have to be registered for one of my classes. So there's criteria for a student coming to my lecture. Now, once you've met that criteria, there's inclusion, there's diversity, there's a welcoming atmosphere. I hope that's what I try to create in my classrooms. By each person, the authors intend that all people, regardless of race, culture, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or religion, are welcome to enter the applicant pool. Now we're talking specifically about the application process, but the same thing is true about this environment, about becoming a student at a university. Your race, ethnicity, religion, etc., shouldn't be a deciding factor whether you can be there or not. Diversity in organizations has its roots in the civil rights movement here in America. This can be found in the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The authors pointed out that diversity includes the following: women in the workplace, people from different cultures, and people from different nations. However, it also includes people of different sexual orientations, people with disabilities, people from different age groups, and even more. Even more. That's why when I hear the critics against DEI, and all they talk about is the racial aspect of it. They're not realizing that a significant portion of their own people group benefit from DEI: senior citizens, the ill, the disabled, veterans. Okay? We can keep going on this list. Female. All of a sudden, you see DEI benefits all of us. Now, diversity takes time. Due to society being made up of individuals, each with their very own worldview, if we all had the same general worldview, we would still have 4 different worldviews in this one room and another 3 online. That's 7 different worldviews. Even if we all held to the same worldview, we each have our own way of perceiving it and understanding it. And so there's a uniqueness to each person's worldview. You can't sum everybody up and say, well, all people who are of the Muslim faith think this way. Wrong. All people of the Christian faith think this way. Wrong. You can say some people, but you can't say all, because you don't know for sure that every single person in that group actually thinks that way when it comes to X, Y, or Z. And so we've got to allow for diversity even within a monocultural type worldview. So if there's a worldview and it's predominantly comprised of males, middle-aged, white, we still can't say that they are without diversity, because in that group, there are people that have different things that they feel more strongly about than others. And so every worldview is different. And there's still so much more work to be done in making diversity commonly accepted. Once again, we go back to the whole idea of, how do I want to be treated? Do I want to be excluded simply because I'm bald? Or I've got a white goatee, soul patch, whatever you want to call it? No. Or because I have tattoos? No. So then why am I excluding people for things? Now, diversity and inclusion can help businesses become more profitable by improving the interpersonal relationships between employees. But we can extend it even further. It can benefit the relationships between the employees and the leaders, between the employees and the clients or customers, between the organization and the community in general. So diversity is actually a very powerful tool. Communication can improve when diversity is active. Diversity and inclusion are the ethical approaches in business. If you want to apply a strong sense of ethics in business, it's going to need to include diversity and inclusion. There's a third thing that needs to be included that's not brought up in the material this week, but I'm going to throw it in here now. It's called equity. And that is literally treating everybody the same. No favoritism, no special favors, because, well, that person looks like me, so I'm going to favor them. I'm going to give them better grades. I'm going to give them more work. I'm going to pay them more. No, we treat everybody exactly the same. I will grade you the same way as I grade everyone else. It's not based on what you look like, what you believe, where you come from, what you do, what you say. No, it's the work itself. That's what I'm grading. I turn to a rubric and I apply that rubric to everybody. Plain and simple. Now, there is a benefit to diversity. It's called the diversity dividend. The diversity dividend is the effect of an organization implementing diversity and then finding an increase in overall productivity, leading to increased profit. Why would this happen? Because if I bring diversity, and I'm going to include inclusion and equity in here, into my organization, I'm going to find employees that want to work there. They're going to be more engaged, willing to contribute their ideas and their expertise. I'm going to find people who are motivated, and I'm going to find employees that are satisfied. If I have that, my customers are going to benefit. And my customers are going to feel satisfied, engaged, and motivated. Byers and Stanbury noted that studies indicate organizations with a diverse leadership team tend to improve their profit margin. As a matter of fact, I've seen studies where if there is a board of directors of an organization and they are all male, they'll see this type of profit right here. If that board changes to including a couple females and people from other cultures, that organization begins to get better and better and get more profit and succeed in the long term. Critics claim that diversity programs reduce the organization's ability to earn profit. I have not seen any studies that indicate that. However, this is not reflected in the research discussed by Byers and Stanbury or the research I've seen. I have not been able to find any credible research out there indicating that diversity harms the financial ability of organizations. Rather, I've seen many things pointing towards in the midterm and long term of that organization, bringing diversity, inclusion, and equity in, and corporate social responsibility, their profits are going to increase sustainably. Not just in a spike and then drop back down, but a sustainable long-term increase. Who does diversity actually benefit? Your textbook discussed how the internal stakeholders, meaning employees, the leadership, and the staff of organizations benefit from diversity. Well, customers also benefit too. We just mentioned that. The external stakeholders, meaning the customers, they benefit from diversity through the increase in creativity and innovation that diversity brings with it. If you've never taken Management 4950, half of that course is simply about, well, actually, the first half is about psychological safety for teams, and the second half is about systems theory. These two things combined together do create an environment that is more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. Okay? It is essential in organizations if you want creativity and innovation that you've got to be able to deal with the chaotic moments and to be able to deal with a multitude of different perspectives and to bring them all to the table and not turn anything away. As ridiculous as it is, if we were brainstorming for how to launch a new product and someone says, we need to bring in a bunch of clowns, we want that idea on the table. It may sound ridiculous. It may be ridiculous. However, BIOS might be sitting and go, clowns? No. What if we brought in and he came up with another idea? No, that's awesome. Because now the ridiculous idea that came onto the table created his brain to think creatively. He came up with something that we couldn't use. We wouldn't have that without the ridiculous suggestion of bringing clowns into the process. So no idea is too stupid or ridiculous to be put onto the table. And by allowing your people to feel that they're included, to be able to have this diversity, that they're going to be treated equally, it's a safe environment, they're going to give these ideas. There are many things about our technology that we have because of people's mistakes. Mistakes are not necessarily bad. So bring them to the table. Can diversity bring problems with it? When a portion of the staff or leadership is stuck in old ways of thinking, such as we call it the status quo, such as standing against diversity, the organization may take longer to fully implement any diversity policy. Meaning, if there's a bunch of old school people and they're like, nope, diversity is all this bad thing and we don't need it in here and we do just fine without it. We never did it that way before. They stay in the status quo. They stay in an old way of doing something that no longer works. The business, no matter how big or small, it is now a globalized environment for business. So we need to bring diversity, inclusion, and equity in because we have people from all around the world. Why do some people dislike diversity so much? Some people have believed logical fallacies, or they've been trapped in a cognitive bias like racism, sexism, ageism, abilityism, and that creates an environment hostile to diversity. This is because they are stuck in the us versus them mentality, which is the same thing as the in-group versus the out-group mentality. Byers and Stanbury pointed out that sometimes people resist any change. Therefore, they are against diversity simply because, like I said, we've never done it that way before. I don't like new stuff. Really? Because the ideas you have were once new. We need to be willing to evolve as an organization. As leaders, we have to be willing to evolve because humanity is always changing. That's what evolving means. We're not necessarily even have to go into evolution on this. Evolving is change. So if an organization does not change, it becomes stagnant and it loses its competitive advantage, reduces its profit margin, and will eventually die. But if it's like a stream that flows through your backyard and the water keeps flowing, life can grow. But if you block that off and create a stagnant pond with no inflow and outflow of water, it will become stagnant and death will reign in there. The same is true in organizations. Now, looking at disability in the workplace, Byers and Stanbury noted that the Americans with Disabilities Act was passed in 1990 to protect disabled workers. This is to protect the person during the hiring process. It also is to protect them if they become disabled after being hired. The company even has to make accommodations for the disabled person, such as special chairs, devices, etc. When I worked at the IRS, because I have several medical conditions, diseases, etc. They got a letter from my doctor. They got that. I gave it to them. They got me an expensive special chair that was designed to help me to be able to perform my task better. Now, there are some criteria here. One, it has to be reasonable. If the request for accommodation is not reasonable, the organization does not have to accommodate. So if I came in and said, you need to buy me a new vehicle, when I don't drive for work, I just drive to and from work, the organization does not have to do that. It has to be pertaining to your task, and it has to be reasonable. And there still are some loopholes that organizations use to get around this. Being a disabled person myself, I have experienced that firsthand. The authors pointed out that the word reasonableness is significant in the legislation. This means that the required accommodation must be reasonable and not prohibitive to the work being done or too costly to provide. Do you think this can be used as a loophole? Absolutely. Because reasonableness is different for the IRS than it would be for an organization that only has 3 employees. The IRS has a bigger budget. They could afford that chair. A place with 3 employees can't. And so that has to be taken in consideration. Is that a loophole? Not yet. But when an organization begins to say, Well, we're not able to because it's prohibitive or because it's too costly, and they have the resources to be able to do it. Now they're using it as a loophole. And that would be unethical. Let's talk about religious diversity. Religious diversity is also covered under the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Non-belief is also included in this protection. I used to be a theist, meaning I believed in a God. I was actually a Baptist pastor for about 10 years. That's why I have a theology degree. I changed. After going through seminary, I had too many questions that were unanswered. And I'm not going to go into the specifics right now, but I have very logical reasons why I, for ethical reasons, quit being a minister. If I don't believe something, I shouldn't tell people that they should believe it. So ethically, I quit. And I gravitated towards saying, I don't know, which that's being agnostic. I don't know if there's a God. Now, functionally, because I don't know that there's a God, I don't say there's a God and I don't follow a God. So functionally, I'm an atheist. So I'm considered an atheist light, if that's you want to put it that way. I'm not militant about it. I don't say there is no God. I just say I don't know that there's a God, therefore I don't follow one. In 10 years, my view might be different, and I have the freedom to change. And I am protected under the law. Byers and Stanbury pointed out that there are four main tenets under this law. You have non-discrimination, non-harassment, non-retaliation, and reasonable accommodation. So an organization should be able to uphold that law, but yet they still work at finding loopholes around it to exclude people of different worldviews, of different religions, of different cultures, ethnicities. They find excuses. Instead of saying, well, it's because they're from this country, they say, well, we just don't need new applicants right now. And they close down the application process until they begin to get more people that fit what they want. Then they open it back up and they don't have to say why they rejected somebody. As long as no one's talking about it, they can do almost whatever they want to. So now they interview only the people that they want, they hire from that group, and they move forward. So yes, there are loopholes. Now, if it becomes known that that's what they're doing, if there is an email trail, if there's some sort of document or something that proves it, then they are in grave danger of being held accountable. Legal protection for religious diversity includes only bona fide religious beliefs, meaning I can't say, when I'm at Walmart and the guy at the Anderson window counter, right there, you come out the self-checkout, and he's like, want me to talk to you about Windows? And I say, I don't believe in Windows. Now, obviously, I believe in Windows. I use Windows, but I say that making it kind of ridiculous and silly. So he gets off my back and I get out of there with a smile on my face. But if I say I am an anti-Windowist and it's my religion, our holidays are on this day, this day, and this day, I am basically creating my own religion. Now, I as a person can do that. But organizations are not bound by the law to give me those days off or to give me the observance of my windowless religion because it's not a bona fide religious belief system, meaning something that there is a large group of adherents to. There is a historical record going back demonstrating the longevity of that belief system, etc. It didn't sprout from something. It just popped into my head and I made it and moved forward. No organization has to give me any accommodation. So employees cannot make up a new religion and expect to be protected by this law. The company has to demonstrate proof of hardship if the requested religious accommodation is too extreme. When I worked at the IRS, there were individuals from all over the place, and it was just a wonderful environment, in my opinion. There was a gentleman who was Muslim, and he requested to be able to go in at certain times of the day to do his prayers. They granted it. They found this little room. They said no one's using it. You can go in there and do your prayers. Somebody that was there from India, and she had to wear certain garments on. They let it happen. Wearing a hijab at work is not a problem. The only time it is a problem is if for some reason it gets caught in the machine and now becomes a danger. But there are ways I've seen where even nurses, women be able to wear a head covering at work from Muslim women, and they make it so it's secure so patients can't grab at it and doesn't get caught and stuff. So there are ways to accommodate safely. But the company has got to demonstrate we can't do this. It's too extreme. So back to my example, my window religion. I have to have a window present for me to shatter the window, the glass on it every day at noon in my religion. The organization says, whoa, that is prohibitive. That's expensive. We're not going to do that. The cleanup, they are covered under the law. One, it's not a bona fide religion. Two, it's too costly to provide that accommodation. It's too messy. It's dangerous. So they don't have to provide it. And so as long as the accommodation is in the best interest of safety and it's not too costly for that organization, then that organization is supposed to provide it. The employer does not need to provide unrealistic accommodations. There is no distinction between cultural heritage and religion. So a woman who is of the Islamic faith needing to cover her head, that should be accommodated. A woman from another country, I think over in India, they do this too, where it's just part of their cultural tradition where they wear a wrap around part of their head. And it's not necessarily for religious purposes, if I understand. I could be wrong about that. And I don't want to be ignorant, but both are seen under the law as the same thing. And so a woman from India should be able to wear what she culturally wears, and a woman from an Islamic faith should be able to wear what she needs to wear for her religious beliefs under this law. And to me, there's no problem with that. I think that's a wonderful thing. Byers and Stanbury pointed out that religious accommodations may include special items of clothing being permitted, meaning the uniform may need to be altered. Special permission for variations in grooming. Back in the military, we had to shave our face unless we had a medical condition or you had a special permission to do it for your religious belief. And I want to say the Sikh religion, the men need to have a beard. And so in the military, an individual who is Sikh would get the permission to be able to have his beard. Times for prayers or meditations, religious expressions, dietary considerations. Now, this really only applies to organizations that provide food for their employees. If you've got a cafeteria, then you need to be able to provide something for people who have restrictions from eating pork or this or that. You need to provide that. If you don't have a cafeteria, then it's really not something you have to worry about. Religious diversity and atheism/agnostic non-belief. Byers and Stanbury noted that the Supreme Court has set a precedent allowing non-theistic beliefs, such as atheists and agnostics, to be protected under the law. This brings us to the discussion of religious tolerance here. American, I know there's an extra in there. America has religious tolerance codified in the Constitution, but is it found in every workplace? Nope. Religious intolerance is still a problem today, and this includes intolerance for non-believers as well. It makes me angry that there is intolerance towards people of different faiths, such as individuals of the Muslim faith, of the Islamic faith, etc., and for those who are agnostic and atheists. It blows my mind. Why can't we just let people have their worldview, their beliefs as they see fit for themselves? As long as you're not harming others, what's the problem? It goes back to we as human beings want to be right. How do we know we're right? When other people agree with us and do the things we say should be done. So my mother, living in an echo chamber, surrounds herself with people that say and do the things that she agrees with. I do not do and say those things. I am not in my mother's main group of friends. I don't have a problem with that because I'm going to be me. But as a leader, I am going to create an environment where people don't feel that being pushed away that I felt in my own family. I want people to feel welcome and included. regardless of what they believe, if they don't believe, what they wear, what they eat, that doesn't matter to me. As a leader, I should be concerned, is that person able to do the job and do they perform well? If those answers are yes, it doesn't matter to me the other things because they're not important in that situation. Now we're going to go to sexual orientation discrimination. In America, not every state has laws prohibiting discrimination against a person's sexual orientation. At the federal level, the Defense of Marriage Act of 1996 restricted the federal interpretations of marriage and spouse to opposite sex unions. This codified discrimination against one's sexual orientation in the hiring process. This law was repealed by the Respect for Marriage Act of 2022. However, the legal battle is far from over, and this could change yet again. While there's a lot of controversy around sexual orientation, gender, and everything like that, I turn to science, and I want to see what the scientists have to say. Before I left being a pastor, I had a parishioner come and ask me about their brother who was gay. I said, let me think about it. Let me do some research and I'll get back with you. I just don't want to answer and say something and for it not to be truly what I think is true. I found scientific studies that indicated that there was a group of preoperative transgendered people who were born male but identified as female. They did MRIs of their brains. Now, a woman's brain is different in an MRI than a man's brain. They both look like brains, but the structures, there's some differences in the way the structures are genetically put together. They found in that group of transgendered people who were born male that their brains had the shape and the markings of a female brain. I said, interesting. So then that means that this isn't just something that somebody thinks and decides and feels. It literally is at the genetic level. And I went back and I told this to that parishioner and I said, if we believe that we were created by this deity, which at that time I did, then we have to say that he allowed for that variation to occur. So gender isn't just on a black and white, plus or minus, male or female scale. It's literally a spectrum. And all along the way, it could be manifested through the brain or through this or that. And so I think we still got so much to learn about this. So I don't want to make some arbitrary decision as a leader. So I err on the side of inclusion, diversity, equity. I want to treat somebody the way I want to be treated, regardless of what gender they identify with. That's not for me to decide. Not as a business leader, not as a professor, not as anything. It's my duty to have empathy, understanding, care, concern, to be a good leader, to be ethical. If that person is doing their tasks, if they're performing well, they got a good attitude, it shouldn't matter to me one way or other what they identify with. That's me personally. And unfortunately, many people don't think the way I do. And I'm not saying I have it right. My way of viewing it is just one of many ways. I tend to err on the side of being in the middle. I think we probably still have a few more decades or more to go through before we get this figured out as a society. Now, let's look at the ethics of it all. Byers and Stanbury discussed the opportunity ethical leaders have to treat each person equally, regardless of their sexual orientation. Studies have revealed that organizations providing equal treatment to all employees, regardless of their sexual orientation, have seen an increase in their profit margin. This is a topic that we need to watch for years to come. It's going to be interesting. And we have to kind of ask the question, will companies continue to implement non-discrimination policies or will they revert to discriminatory policies? Because at least in this country, politics, religion, society, and business are very intertwined. The Human Rights Campaign Foundation puts out an index showing which states here in America have the most there's a G missing, LGBTQ plus, I forgot the G, friendly companies. Let's take a look. Now, this is as of 2015. So Maryland is at the top, and Kentucky is more towards the middle, the bottom of this list, and this is just a small sampling. I wanted to see what the current situation is here. So the most current data I've been able to find was for 2024. Let's take a look at it. This is from the Human Rights Organization we were talking about. The green states, these are states that expressly prohibit employment discrimination based on sexual orientation and gender identity. You'll notice not every state is included being green. The blue state, which there's one, this is a state that expressly prohibits employment discrimination based on sexual orientation only. And you'll notice that there are a few states that have a yellow outline. They're green, but they have a yellow outline. And enforcement authorities are accepting complaints on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity because the state has adopted the Bostock rationale into state law. But I still see here 16 states that it's still legal to discriminate. And this is back in 2024 when this data was published. This is one of those classes where there's a few topics that get sensitive. The religious aspect, sexual orientation aspect. Now we're going to move to something that's a little less. I want to see, give me 1 second here. I might want to split the lecture here. Yep. We're going to split the lecture here so we can still have class on Wednesday. It won't be a long class, but we'll still have class then. We're going to be talking about income inequality, and we have the lower class, the middle class, the upper class, and the top 1%. It's going to be an interesting conversation. If you're curious to know where you stand, this is an opportunity to be able to learn that. It's kind of illuminating to realize, oh, okay, well, I guess I'm at that level. Okay. I grew up dirt poor. Okay. And so technically now I'm middle class, and it feels good because I have money I'm able to use to get things, but I'm still limited. I don't have an unlimited supply of money. But knowing where I stand economically shows me the purchasing power I have and the influence I do have on the market and on other businesses, and et cetera. So it's just kind of interesting. We talked a couple of weeks before about how a living wage was calculated. I hope you remember that. But now we're going to be talking about income inequality because this week is about diversity and inclusion. So does anybody have any questions today? Bios.
I have a question for the Zoom link. I wasn't there on Wednesday. I used that one, like, there were like a few links on the announcements. I used one that didn't work. And then,
Well, there should be a video in the announcements. There should be the video from it.
did you?
Yeah, because every time we have Zoom, I record it and I post it.
Yeah, I mean, because of, like, I didn't show up. I
Right.
didn't get the attendance, but then there were like a few links.
Well, I think I didn't mark you missing. I left you gray because if we have on a Wednesday class and you don't show up in the Zoom room, I don't mark you as not being there because I post the video. So you might watch it at 10 o'clock that night. So I leave that open.
Could you make a new announcement where you put like.
Well, I'm going to show you where it is right now. Week 9, this is Wednesday, week 9, Wednesday, slides and video. There's the video right there.
Okay.
So it's on the announcements, week 9, Wednesday, slides and video.
I mean, for that, I always have to like copy and then paste it in the browser.
Well, all you have to do,
The first one is the first announcement he sent.
yeah, the very first announcement, that was one that was more of a copy and paste, I think. See, all you have to do here is just click.
Yeah, just copy and paste it.
It's everything.
Yeah,
It's just like a night, you just look at the main ID and the password.
Yeah.
You can do that also because you can do it that way, or that's to get into the Zoom. But no, I don't send it out every week. The first week that I sent it out is when I send out the invitation because I don't change the meeting.
Yeah.
The meeting, it's all the same password, all that. So, but for you to get caught up, just go to the announcements and you click in the video and it's going to pop up.
Yeah.
All right. Any other questions? Any other answers? Nope. All right. Well, everybody, you have a good day. Enos, I see you came in. I'll mark you down as here.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. Have a good day.
No problem. You have a good day. See, for instance, right here, when I leave it gray, it's not saying that she's not here. Green says that you were here, but she's not an international student, so she's not required to be in the classroom on Mondays. I know that later in the day, she might see it
Yes.
and watch it. Now, unfortunately for the international students, if Basil, you weren't here today, this is our day to be here, I have to mark you as red.
But Wednesday, if you just leave it great.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
That's the fairest, most ethical way I found to do it, so.
Thank you, sir.
All right, hey, y'all,
Good day.
you have a good day.
You want the door closed or open?
Open's fine. Goodbye, Donovan. See you Wednesday.
That's right.